Hey there, this is Ross Izzard, and this is the Backcountry Fly Fishing Podcast, where we talk about spooky stories, because it's Halloween. You thought I was going to say something else, but it's spooky story time. This is not the beginning of Season 2. We will do that next week, or maybe in a couple of weeks. It depends on when I can actually get back to a normal recording schedule. But in November, we will get to Season 2, and it's going to be all about winter fly fishing and how beautifully brutal that can be. So that's something for you to look forward to. Got a whole bunch of really good content that I think will help you be a better winter angler lined up. But for right now, it's the day after Halloween. So I went trick-or-treating with my kids last night. Had an awful lot of fun. Lots of spooky ghosts, lots of zombies, lots of skeletons, and all kinds of stuff. And Halloween's a lot of fun, but I tell you what, every now and then you run into something spooky out in the backcountry. And in fact, there can be some pretty spooky stuff out in the woods, especially when you're by yourself. So I wanted to take a brief moment to celebrate Halloween with you and share a spooky story from one of my backcountry experiences here in the last year. So without any further ado, here we go. The story has to do with me hiking into a remote canyon. It's one of my favorite canyons. I get in there probably 3 or 4 times a year. And it is known for a number of things. One being very difficult to access. 2, being very infrequently visited by others. And 3, being home to one of the largest populations of mountain lions in the state of Colorado. And maybe in the western U.S. I've heard that from a couple people, but I'm not sure if it's true. So this was way back in the beginning of the year. We're talking early March. I had been fishing tailwaters, doing the tailwater hell thing for months, right? Fishing 5 or 6 tailwaters, still getting out there in those frigid temperatures, still catching fish, cussing a lot with really sore fingers. And I was like, man, I got to get back out there. I think the water temperatures are coming up. I checked a couple of the US GS stations. I figured the temps were coming up, and I was like, if I can get there, if I can get through the remaining spring snow that's on the ground, get in that canyon, I bet it's going to be awesome. I really do. I think it's going to be great. And I got to get off the tailwaters. I got to get back into the backcountry. I got to do it. So I woke up pretty early one morning. Like I said, it's March. You know, the sun's coming up at a little bit more of an acceptable time. So it's not like still dark at 8 a.m. like it is in the dead of winter. I packed my stuff. It was a mixture of my spring stuff and my winter stuff because I expected a bunch of snow. But I also expected the temperatures to come up later in the day to the 50s or even the 60s, and I wanted to make sure that I had stuff to be comfortable there. Packed my waders, packed my boots, strapped those to my backpack, threw all of the stuff into my old faithful white Toyota Tundra, and I drove down to this trailhead. There was not a single other person on the road, and I mean, not even on the highway to the road to get to the trailhead. I did not see a single other human being, nothing. No tracks in the snow. There was still snow and ice on the ground, especially in the shady spots that don't get any sun. Just no evidence that any people had been out there since at least the previous fall. And maybe before then, because not a lot of people go into this particular section. Pulled into the lot, parked my truck, got out, used the bathroom, did my normal routine of getting all my stuff set up, checking my gear, making sure I was ready to start hiking. And I got this really odd just sort of feeling of foreboding out there. And I've had them before out in the backcountry. There is a really good argument to be made that is your intuition and your brain picking up on something that maybe consciously you aren't noticing, but your brain is picking up on unconscious or subconscious cues and telling you that something is wrong. And I had a little bit of that kind of weird feeling in the back of my head. But I thought, listen, I just haven't really been doing a lot of hiking. I've been out of this for 3 months or so and fishing closer to home. It's just kind of my preseason jitters. It's pretty normal to be nervous on your first serious backcountry hike or trip of the year. So I did the stupid thing, and I ignored it. And I said, well, this is going to be fine. It's not going to be a big deal. I know what I'm doing. I've been doing this for years. I'm going to get in there and I'm going to catch these damn fish because that's what I'm going to do. And I set my jaw and I decided I was going to go. And so I strapped all my stuff to my backpack. I put my backpack on and I started my Garmin inReach so it could track my trip. And I hit the trail, started walking. This hike is it's 3.5 to 4 miles into the canyon to the first place where you can fish. And then it's about another mile or another mile and a half further into the canyon to where I like to fish. So it's, anywhere from a 6 to 7 to 10 mile hike, sometimes longer, depending on how far you go. And the trail is sort of this interesting trail where there's a little bit of up when you first start it from the parking lot, but what you're really doing is making your way through several sort of draws between mountains. You're kind of going to the end of one, doing a switchback, coming back out, going around a tip, going into another draw. You're sort of just making your way across the face of these mountains until the trail drops down into the canyon where the river is. And so I started going, and, when I first started out, everything was fine. The sun was out. There were birds chirping. Things were fine. It was just a normal hike. I was happy to be out there. I had my winter stuff on, and I was hiking along. I climbed up the first couple of inclines, no big deal. And I was feeling like, man, I really am. I'm still in shape from last season. This is great. And a little further up, maybe let's say a mile in, I get to the top of the first sort of incline section before it starts dropping down into one of the first draws. And I'm kind of hot. I'm wearing a bunch of layers. I just, I got to take something off. I'm getting sweaty. You really don't want to get sweaty when it's cold outside, as you all know, because that sweat evaporates and then you get really cold. So ironically, getting too hot will make you too cold pretty quickly. So I stopped. I took off my backpack. I stripped off my outer layer. Stripped off one inner layer, stuffed them in my backpack, got myself dressed again, put the backpack back on. And as I was putting my backpack back on, a weird shape kind of caught my eye over to the side of the trail. And I put the backpack on, I strapped it on, and I looked over and I was like, man, what is that? That's a weird shape. It's like this, strange mound lying in the grass by some trees right next to the trail just ahead of me. So I strapped my pack on, and I wandered up to this thing to see what it was, and it was a deer carcass. And not just any deer carcass. This thing had been mauled by something big with real sharp teeth and real sharp claws, blood everywhere, throat ripped out, just very violent end for this particular animal. And it had been partially eaten. So a lot of the good stuff, the guts were gone, a lot of the good meat had been taken off of it, and this thing had clearly been dragged there and eaten by something which in this particular canyon was almost certainly a mountain lion. If you don't know anything about mountain lions, they typically don't want to mess with people, right? And they especially don't want to mess with large human adult males because we're just not good targets. We might fight back, they might get hurt. They get hurt, they can't hunt anymore, and so they're toast. And so they're skittish, right? They get a bad rap and they can be scary. But in general, mountain lions just want to leave you alone. I've run into dozens of them, probably more than that I didn't know about. And I've never had an issue except for this one day. And maybe one other day, but we'll share that story a different time. But anyway, they are very protective about their kills, right? So mountain lions do not like you messing with their food any more than I would like you coming in and like eating pizza out of my refrigerator. Just don't do that, man. That's my food, right? I worked hard for it. Don't take it, don't eat it without permission. And if it's a mountain lion's food, there's no permission granted. They just don't want you to touch their shit, right? So they get pretty mad if you get too close to those carcasses. So I hoofed it out of there. I stepped over this thing's head, which was kind of laying in the trail, and I walked through a bunch of fur that had been ripped out and bloody patches of skin. And I thought, oh man, that was oof. And I kept walking. Came around the bend, down into the first draw, and I ran into extremely deep snow. And we're talking, hip deep. I'm about 6 feet tall, so hip deep on me is in the neighborhood of 3 feet or so, I would say. This section doesn't get a lot of sunlight. It's hemmed in on both sides by mountain ridges, so there's not a lot of sun in there, and as a result, the snow had not melted. So even though the first part of the trail was pretty dry, this part was not. And I got in there. I started walking through the snow and trudging through it. I lost the trail almost immediately because nobody else had been back in there, so no footprints to follow. You can't see the trail under 3 feet of snow, and so I just kind of had to do it by memory and based off of my map to try to stay as close to the trail as I could. And I stomped down into the forest, and as I'm stomping down into the forest, I start noticing that there are little droplets of blood along the trail, which is interesting because I didn't see a lot of blood anywhere else. I saw it by the deer carcass, but I hadn't seen any other blood since then. But I'm walking along and I'm seeing very clearly pretty decent size, like marble size, droplets of blood in this pure crystal white snow. No prints, no tracks of any kind, just little drops of blood, which I thought was a very interesting thing to see. But, as usual, I said, well, shit happens out in nature and who cares? And so I kept going. I'm making my way down the bend and I hear a chirp. And this is not a normal chirp. So this is not a bird chirp. Although a lot of people think it is a bird. But mountain lions actually chirp. And I don't know if you guys know that. You can actually Google this and find a YouTube video or recording of it. They make this loud, high-pitched, single chirping sound. And it sounds just like a bird, if you haven't ever heard one before. And if you don't know what it is, I heard that. And it could not have been more than maybe 100 or 200 feet away from me, further up on the ridge. So, I'm walking along. There's blood there. I've seen a deer carcass. Now I've got chirping that I know is a cat. And I was thinking, man, I don't know. Maybe I ought to call it a day here. Now, I will say, chirping in general is not a bad thing. If the mountain lion is letting you know that he or she is there, it's not really a predatory behavior. If they want to eat you, they're going to be real quiet. So if they're stalking you and they're hunting you in a predatory fashion, they're not going to make any noise at all. If they are making noise to you, or at you, I should say, then, probably they're just letting you know that they're there, they're talking to their cubs, whatever they might be doing, but it's not really a predatory thing. So when I hear it, I'm aware that there's a cat around, but I'm also aware that probably that cat's not interested in having me for dinner. So I saw that and I'd heard it and I thought, well, okay. I mean, I know there are cats in here. There are a lot of cats in here, hundreds of them. So I shouldn't be surprised about this. I'm going to just keep going. So I did. Kept hiking, made my way through that draw, came out the other side. The trail cleared off again because there was sunlight on that side of the hill. Made my way around to the next draw. Same thing. Really, really deep snow. This stuff almost up to my waist. And I didn't bring snowshoes for this trip because I didn't expect to need them, and because I'm an idiot. I should have had them, but I didn't. So I post-holed through that one, and about halfway down that draw, I slipped and I fell. And the way this thing is it's like a real tight corner. It goes to the end of the draw, and then it real quickly turns around and starts climbing back out the other side, which means that you're on like a real steep hill going down on the way into the draw, and then another steep hill coming out. And it's pretty, those slopes are pretty serious. So I slipped. I lost my footing. I fell on my butt, and I slid 150 feet down this hill. I was pretty sure I was going to get real badly hurt by hitting a tree or something else. It's like being in an uncontrolled sled through a heavily forested snowfield. By some miracle, I managed to plant my feet on a couple of trees and stop myself not too far from the bottom. Collected myself, cussed a little bit, got my stuff, stood up, tromped my way through the rest of the snow back to the other side of the draw, got back on the trail, and then kept going. And that little cut through is going to be important here in a couple of minutes. So I left this string of tracks from one side of the draw to the other, but it didn't follow the actual trail. It was just an accidental, oops, I fell, and now I got to come out the other side situation. So I keep going. I don't hear any more chirps. I don't see any more blood. I don't see any more deer carcasses. And about 3.5 miles in, I get to the river. I get down there. There's some snow on the ground down there. There's less than there was in the draws, but still a fair amount down in the canyon. Lay my stuff out, put on my waders, put on my boots, rig up my fly rod, put on my flies, and start walking a little further in the canyon so I can hop in and then start fishing. I fished for, let's say an hour, maybe an hour and a half. I was not having much luck. That water temperature, I really thought it was going to be up in the high 30s or even the low 40s, and it was like 35. We'll talk about this more in the coming season, but I believe that water temperatures below 36 are probably not worth fishing in most cases. The fish are just, their metabolisms are cratered. They're not paying a lot of attention. There's not a lot of bug activity going on in water that cold. You probably have icebergs floating around. And really below 36, you're going to have a tough day. And so when I take a temperature reading and I see it that low, I know it's probably going to be a tough day. And sure enough, this was a tough day. So I fished, maybe an hour and a half, like I said, probably about a mile a stream in that time because I was being pretty selective about where I flung that nymphing rig. Did not touch a fish. I did not. I didn't see a fish, didn't touch a fish. I was just too early in this particular stream. And so I'm fishing along, and after about an hour and a half, I'm starting to get kind of, man, I don't know if this is going to happen for me today. Confidence is low. Just not sure it's going to work out. And I got the same feeling that I had back in the parking lot, but this one was 100 times stronger. I mean, it was like I felt this crazy sense of impending doom. I thought that something bad was about to happen. Like it was this crazy, heavy presence that I felt it before, but I haven't felt it often. And it was overwhelming. It's like alarm bells just going off in my head like crazy. So I kind of looked around and I stood for a minute listening to see what I could see and hear what I could hear. I could hear the river, of course, but otherwise I heard absolutely nothing. I didn't hear those birds anymore. I didn't hear any insects buzzing around. It was just silent down in this forested section at the bottom of this canyon. Just absolutely, deathly, otherworldly silent. Always quiet outside. It's always quiet in the backcountry. That's part of why we love going out there, is because we enjoy the quiet and the solitude. But this was a different level of quiet. This was just profound, oppressive silence. And I'm going to tell you, it knocked me off my game, right? I mean, I backcountry fly fishing is my thing. I spend a lot of time in the wilderness by myself. I don't get spooked easily. I like to think that I've gotten very used to being out there. I like to think that most of the general jitters that people have about being outside have left me a long time ago. I'm not terribly afraid of animals. I'm not terribly afraid of other people out there or conditions because I know how to handle them, and I've kind of been around them after many hundreds of days out there. But this was different. And I was like, man, I gotta leave. I gotta get out of here. I gotta pack my stuff up and I gotta go right now. It's time to start hiking out. So without further ado, I jumped out of the river. I found a real open spot where I could see in 360 degrees around me, stripped off my waders, stripped off my boots, got them rolled up and packed onto my pack, took down my rod, took off my flies, got everything packed up, rod back in the tube, back in the backpack, got everything geared up, and just was like, and this feeling never left me, right? It probably took me 10 minutes to go sit and pull everything off and pack it all up and get everything organized for hiking and situate myself. Probably 10 minutes of that. And I never stopped having this insanely oppressive feeling. It's like one of those dreams where you think somebody's chasing you and they're about to get you. That feeling where it's like, oh my God, they're going to get me right now. I got to go. Is that feeling. That was what I had. And it was really, really stressful and really, really unpleasant. So I packed my stuff up. I threw on my backpack and I hustled my ass back up the trail as fast as I could. I'm like slipping and sliding on the ice, post-holing, tripping on stuff, practically falling over. I'm like, I got to get the hell out of here right now. On the way back, there's snow on the ground, like I said. I am following my own tracks out, right? Which is a good method. If you ever have to walk through snow, because it's kind of hard to pathfind in snow, you want to follow your own tracks, in part because it makes it easier to find the path that you took in, and in part because you already packed down that snow. So rather than post-holing back through again with fresh holes, you can use your footprints going back out to save yourself a little bit of energy and let yourself be a little more relaxed about your hike out, because you know you're on the right path and you're walking on semi-packed snow as opposed to, fresh powder where you might fall through at any moment and possibly get hurt. Post-holing is not a great thing to do. We'll talk about that more next season. But anyway, I make my way out, and right maybe a half mile from where I had stopped to pack up, right as I'm about to start the ascent back out of the canyon, I look down and I notice a new set of prints. It is not human prints. There are no other people in this canyon. There's not a single other footprint in this place. Nobody has been in here since at least the previous year. I am the first dumbass to go into this canyon in many months, right? And even during the summer months, there's hardly anybody back there. And so I suddenly, out of the corner of my eye, see this separate set of tracks, maybe a couple feet off to the right of mine. And I'm like, hold on, what am I looking at? And I stop and I look at it and I walk over, and it is a set of the most clearly defined mountain lion tracks I have ever seen in my entire life. So for those who don't know, mountain lions have paw prints, I should say, that look very much like a dog's paw prints. And in fact, it can be kind of hard to tell them apart. But the way that you can tell them apart is that the mountain lion, their nails, their claws, don't make marks in the snow the way that a dog's paws do. Dog's paws and dog's nails don't retract. So they usually leave kind of nail prints right in the snow at the top of their toes. And also, dogs have a different shaped pad. So that little pad on the bottom of their foot in the middle of it, that is a different shape on a dog than it is on a mountain lion. Mountain lions have a very sort of distinctly M-shaped pad there. So when you see a set of tracks and they kind of look like dog tracks, but you don't see claw marks and you notice that kind of M pattern, that's a cat. That's a mountain lion. Not a dog. That's a cat. I'm looking at these footprints and I realize that's a cat. And I'm like, that's kind of weird because there were no prints there on the way in. I did not see any prints, and I was being fairly vigilant. I would have probably noticed these. They were fairly prominent. They were in an open area. I did not notice any prints that close to me on the way in. So these were fresh prints, and I've only been in here, remember, for about an hour and a half. So these are recent prints, right? These are not from a day ago or 6 hours ago or 2 hours ago. They're from like right now. They were there. So I thought, man, well, that's kind of odd. And so I realized that at this point now, there's a cat around me, close. And it's being real quiet. Like I said, the chirping ones, they're trying to let you know they're there. The ones who are being quiet, those might mean you harm. That's a different kind of behavior from those animals. So I start hiking faster. Of course, I'm like, oh, I got to get the hell out of here. So I'm going up the trail and I'm working my way up. And I get back to the first draw and I don't see any tracks there. The first draw coming out of the canyon, I should say, which is the last draw, obviously on the way in. Make my way through there, no problem. I stomp through the snow. I get through, no other cat sign, no muss, no fuss, no chirps, nothing. I get to the next draw, which is where I slipped and I fell down that slope. And keep in mind, I fell down this slope in a way that probably nobody or nothing would follow. It's not on the trail, fairly densely forested. It was the least convenient way to take across that. And that's where I slid down and where I fell. I passed that part. I could see my tracks sort of coming down. Well, I saw the slide mark from where I fell off the top section of the trail. Then I saw my tracks where I trudged out of that basin back onto the trail on the other side of the draw. And I decided, well, I'm just going to keep going past those. I'm obviously not going to try to climb that steep slope and follow the actual trail. So I pass my slide marks and my footprints coming out of the draw from my fall. And as I'm walking past them on the trail, I look over and sure enough, those damn prints are right back next to my footprints in this really obscure, random place in the middle of these trees, right? There are 1,000 other ways that a cat could go that would make a lot more sense than that. They could have gone around the trail. They could have followed the ridge line. There was no reason for a cat to go through that specific path unless that cat was following me. And this is, keep in mind, I'm probably 2 miles out of the canyon at this point, which means that I'm about 1.5 miles from the truck. That means probably that I had a cat following me for 2.5 miles or so, maybe a little longer, over the course of about 2 hours, 1.5 hours or 2 hours. This cat was following me out of the main section of the hike, down into the canyon, and being absolutely silent about it. This freaked me out, right? This was pretty spooky. So now I gotta go, right? At this point, I know I'm being followed. It's clear to me that that's what's going on. It's not making any noise, and the forest is still just dead silent. I mean, it is just, there is nothing happening. It is like somebody turned off the music to your headphones. I mean, it's on mute. There's nothing going on. And now I know I'm being followed. And that is a very predatory type of behavior from a cat. I'm a big dude. I'm a 200-pound, 6-foot guy with a big backpack on me. But this is springtime. The lions are hungry. They haven't had a lot to eat. They might have cubs. They could have young that they need to feed. I don't know how many deer are in that area. Obviously, I saw that one carcass, but I don't know, might have been the same cat, might have been a different cat. Who knows? But they don't have a lot of food. They could be sick. They could be cold. Who knows? But now I know I got a cat, and this cat is stalking me. This is direct hunting, predatory behavior. And I'm not trying to get eaten by a cat, guys. Okay. I made my peace a long time ago with the fact that I could die out there. Something bad could happen to me, and that I do everything I can to prevent it. Of course, safety first in all things, but I accept that there is some level of risk to going into the backcountry. It could be animals. It might be a fall. It could be lightning. It could be avalanche. Who knows? A million things could happen to you out there, and you be as careful as you can, but eventually you have to accept the fact that, bad shit can happen to you when you go off in the wilderness, and especially if you do it alone. Make peace with it, because that's part of the game. But I'm not getting eaten by a cat. Okay, guys, I'm the top of the food chain. I'm not trying to get eaten by a flipping mountain lion, or mauled by a mountain lion, or bitten by a mountain lion, or even touched by a mountain lion. They're pretty animals. I love them. I think they're beautiful, and they're graceful, and they're powerful, and I have a ton of respect for them, but I'm not trying to mess with those cats. I am not. So I start hiking a little faster at this point, and, I'm just going to tell you guys this, and you can be political about it if you want. I'm sure we can have a conversation about safety and being armed in the backcountry at some other point. But now, my hand's in my pocket, and I'm touching my pistol. I always have a handgun with me when I'm out there. I also have bear spray with me a lot of the time. On this particular day, I just had the handgun, and now my hand's on that thing. I'm walking out. I've got my hand on the gun because I'm like, I don't know what's going to pop out ahead of me or jump down from a tree. I'm looking up in the treetops, listening for any sound. I stop occasionally on the trail to do like a 180 and look around me, which is a good practice, by the way, when you're hiking alone anywhere where you think there could be cats. Just stop every quarter mile and just do a quick 180 spin to look around. Even if you don't see anything, the cat will see you do it, and it'll know that you're looking, you're aware, and you're alert. You're not an easy target. So I'm doing that stuff. And it was the longest 1.5 mile hike of my entire life. I mean, I felt like I was being watched, like there was somebody breathing down my neck the entire time. And it was like I had never been outside in my entire life. I mean, I was scared. I'm not going to lie to you guys. Like, I don't know what kind of cat's messing around with me out there, but it was a scary thing. Got back to the truck without incident. Nothing happened. No cats jumped out at me. Nothing bad happened. I passed the deer carcass again. I passed the blood spots again. Got back to the truck. No muss, no fuss. Nothing ate me. Nothing happened. Took off my stuff as fast as I could. Threw it in the back of the truck. I got in the truck, and I hightailed it out of there. I got out of there. I got on the road, and I got going. And it was a really crazy, scary experience for me. In fact, I didn't go back into that canyon even when the snow had melted and the water had warmed up for months after that. I had to work myself back up to it. Because when I'm going to go alone, I don't know what's up out there. So when I eventually did go back, no repeat of this. I've probably been in that place, 24 times over the course of the last 4 or 5 years. Never had another experience like that. But this particular day was really, really spooky, really, really scary, and was a good reminder that you got to be paying attention out there. And when you hear that little voice inside you that says, hey, something's wrong. I don't know what the something is, but something's wrong. There's something going on here that you should be paying attention to, and it might be time for you to go. You should listen to that voice. There's a great book called The Gift of Fear. It's by Gavin DeBecker. It's an old book. It was written back in the 90s, so it's a little dated at this point. I'm going to see if I can get Gavin on to talk about this, but, if I can't, then you'll just have to take my synopsis, which is basically his argument is, listen, you have all of these evolutionary faculties built into you that tell you when something is off. It's called your intuition. And you got to listen to that. That is a gift. That gift of fear, that kind of spine tingly, goosebumpy, hair on the back of your neck standing up, hackle thing. That is your intuition developed over many, 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 many years of your ancestors being eaten by saber-toothed tigers and all kinds of stuff. That is, you may not understand it. You might not be able to articulate it, but it's telling you something. And when it tells you something, you better listen, guys. I mean, I have made the mistake of not listening sometimes. This was one of those times. Not smart, right? I made it out okay. I was fine in the end. I very well could not have been, right? And if you get jumped by a mountain lion off there, even if you win that particular fight and you're alone, you're in trouble. That's a really bad situation. I don't want to be that guy. So that little voice in your head, that kind of still small voice, listen to that thing, because you don't want to have an experience like I did. So got home to the family. That's the end of the story. Sorry if you were hoping for me to get into a fight with the Banshee or the Grim Reaper, or for the mountain lion to jump out and bite off one of my toes. That's not what happened. but it was really, really scary. And it stands out as one of the few, but also one of the most noteworthy scary experiences that I have had in the backcountry. So I hope you enjoyed that. Happy Halloween. Thanks for indulging me in a spooky story. I've got more of these, so I'll probably share another one with you next Halloween. But for now, hopefully this one was enough to give you just a little bit of the spook factor and carry you through until we start season 2 on winter fly fishing here in a couple of weeks. So appreciate you guys. Thanks for joining me. Hope you had a great Halloween, and I'll see you real soon. Till next time, this is Ross. Maybe I'll see you out there. Unless a mountain lion gets me first.